How many steps does it take to complete a Pokemon game? And what if for every single step I took in a Pokemon game, I took one step in real life? How much weight would I lose? How many steps would it take? This idea came to me as I was thinking of a way to lose some quarantine weight in a way that actually motivated me. You see, I hate working out, but I love playing Pokemon. I used to be a pretty athletic person. I did flips during that weird 2000s parkour craze, I played football in middle school, and skateboarded pretty seriously till I was about 18. But I've been gaming a lot for the past few years, and now as I'm into my 20s, I can feel it all catching up to me. But this is about to change. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to live in the Pokemon world. I wanted my own pet Munchlax, and of course I wanted to fly on a Charizard. But then a question popped into my head. Do I have what it takes in my physical state right now to be a Pokemon trainer? Being a Pokemon trainer is literally running and biking everywhere. I mean, come on, when's the last time you played Pokemon without holding down the B button everywhere you went? So I realized it's time to hold down the damn B button in real life. I'm going to track my steps and go on runs for the first time since the Phineasroebuckbuisness pacer test. I'm going to find out once and for all if I have what it takes to beat Pokemon myself on my own 2 feet. Sheesh. You know, just in case I suddenly get transported to the Pokemon universe. Come on, let me at it? No? Okay, let's do this then. Welcome to my journey of beating Pokemon Platinum, where one step in real life equals one step in-game. Before we get into it, let me lay down the rules for the challenge. We will be doing this challenge in Pokemon Platinum because it's the only game currently with a step counter, making this so much easier to keep track of. Rule number 1, every step I take in real life will equal one step in-game. I'll be keeping very close track of my steps with my phone, and I won't be counting casual around the house steps. I will only count them towards the challenge when I set foot out into the real world, ready for adventure, just like my in-game trainer counterpart. Rule number 2, I am not allowed to use any items in battle, so no potions or X items or anything like that, and I will be playing on set mode for a bit of added difficulty. Next rule is I will only be able to catch the first Pokemon I encounter on every route. So when I reach Cynthia, I will only have a set number of Pokemon, and I can't just go catch a Garchomp. I'm doing this because I want to add some variety to the team because we all pick favorites and we'll just end up using our favorite Pokemon unless a rule holds us back to stop it. And also Garchomp is insane. The challenge is complete when I defeat Cynthia and register my Pokemon in the Hall of Fame. And also a bonus rule, every Pokemon I catch will be named after one of my subscribers, so make sure to subscribe and join the community so when I do something like this in the future, you have a chance to be on the team. Without any more delay, let's dive right in. I name myself Fiend and my rival Calorie, which speaks for itself, and as I painfully achieve Chibi form, I awaken in my room, and oh yeah, I can't move. This is where the run truly begins. I did an initial weigh-in so I can see how much weight I can lose by being a Pokemon trainer, so on day 1 I did exactly 3,128 steps, which gave me more gameplay than I thought. I selected my starter Chimchar and named it after a lucky Discord member, shout out Elliot Eel. And by the way, every time I catch a new Pokemon, you'll see their comment pop up on the screen just like this, so congrats to everyone who made it into the game. And to be honest, I love all Sinnoh starters, so this pick was random. But if you're wondering why I'm walking like this, it's because I was actually counting the steps out loud, because you don't receive the Poketch until Jubilife City. But I gave up after about 500 and just decided to round the first 2 routes to about 1,000 steps. After sadly failing to catch a Shinx and arriving in Jubilife, the Poketch was mine, and the journey had truly begun. I booked it right to the rival fight and took it down first try before getting my encounter, which actually turned out to be an Abra. And we all know what happens when you get an Abra as an encounter. It Wait, what? I actually caught it? Little did I know at this time, but this Abra was actually key to the run. Abra helps this challenge in far more ways than one. Prior to getting Fly, it allows me to save steps by using the move Teleport to move in between the middle of nowhere and my last visited Pokecenter. This actually saves me a very decent amount of steps, which is very useful for this challenge. It also just so happened to be modest, so I get that sweet special attack boost. So we continued into the cave and caught a Psyduck, shout out to Wyvern, and after grinding up some levels and catching a lost bat, shout out Shadow Gaming, my Chimchar evolved into Monferno and we learned Mach Punch. and I could faintly hear Rourke shit his pants in the distance. We made our way to the gym and took it out first try. Psyduck came in swinging and knocked out Geodude with a 1 water gun to the dome. But right when you think Psyduck's done, he one-hit KOs Onix as well before going down to a headbutt from Cranidos. But I threw in Monferno for the revenge kill, and just like that, the first badge was ours. So we made our way back to Jubilife City. Booker was being all weird, we killed some Galactic Dude's pet skunk, and made it to Floroma Town with still about 1,000 steps to spare. I caught a Shellos at Valley Windworks, shout out K, and decided to rush right into the Mars fight. A few mistakes by me here got me destroyed, but hey, Paragly got 2 crit scratches on me in a row, so what do I do against that? I forgot I missed an encounter on Route 204 I think, and grabbed a Starly named Penguin, shout out Penguin. I returned to Mars with some blueprints for a Paragly trophy rug, and played it a little safer this time. I got a free switch into Monferno, and a few Mach Punches took Mars out like nothing. After that, I made my way towards Eterna Forest, and at this point I realized a bit of a problem. Grinding. Running back and forth in the grass is very step consuming, but also the only way to train your Pokemon besides the limited amount of trainers. But I had come up with a pretty good method. I call it rotation grinding. By rotating my character by just changing directions, I can get an encounter on the grass without wasting any steps from my pedometer. That combined with the plentiful EXP of Eterna Forest meant it was time to grind. But just as I got started, my steps ran out, and that was the end of day 1. On day 2, I woke up with a bit more spring in my step. I was not just ready to continue the challenge, but excited. I took my run a bit later in the day, around 6 p.m, and it was actually cloudy, which is the best weather by the way, that's just the truth. But little did I know with all those factors, I would end up doubling my step count of the day before, totaling 6,002 steps. So I jumped back into the game, and Abra evolved finally, and now it's insane. I trained everyone up to level 18 by using the rotation grinding, and I only used about 150 steps in total. I arrived in Eterna and met up with Calorie. I caught God, shout out Donette, and on my way back into town, suddenly my knees went weak. Cynthia. She gave me cut, and I made my way towards the gym and easily beat all 3 trainers using Kadabra, Zubat, and Staravia. And then it was time for Gardenia. I accidentally clicked Endeavor, allowing her to get off our Reflect, but luckily after stalling her down to the Super Potion, I got a crit wing attack right after. And now it's time for her Cherrim, which I perfectly switched into Zubat on a Grass Knot and was able to get the kill. After taking out Cherrim, I decided to try and get a Supersonic off on Roserade, and after taking a Stun Spore, I realized Cherrim had just used Safeguard, making Supersonic useless. But now it's time to bring in the big guns. I sent out Kadabra, and Magical Leaf did a bit more than I thought. But then I got a lucky Confusion crit, and that was game. 2 badges down. After breaking into the Galactic Hideout, I made it to the top floor, and by the way, you see this little picture thing on the wall? Yeah, that tells you the right staircase to go up. Just so you know, I didn't know that for freaking years and always went up the wrong one. But anyways, once on the top floor, the battle with Jupiter was way harder than I expected. My moves did almost no damage and she walled most of my team, and easily one-shotted my one counter, which was Shellos. After that, I decided to resort to sacrificing my Pokemon with no good damage output for a free swap into Staravia to get an Intimidate drop because Night Slash just did monumental damage. After about a total of 4 Intimidate drops and like 7 Monferno Mach Punches, the beast was down. Before receiving the Cynthia egg, and of course forgetting the Explorer kit and losing a few steps, who doesn't do that? Eterna was in my wake, and the journey continued. After a random biker's Starly almost decimated half my team, we arrived around 205 again. After getting blindsided by a Geodude and listening to Cyrus ramble, we arrived on Route 208. I caught a Roselia, shout out Big Egg L. I put Roselia on the party and entered Fantina's gym. I rushed the gym fight and the battle began. I led with Shellos and got a lucky Confusion on my first Water Pulse. It then proceeded to hit itself in Confusion 3 times in a row and die. Out comes Haunter. After Haunter puts my Staravia to sleep, I switch into Zubat. Fantina deals out a hefty Shadow Claw which almost kills me, so I knew I needed to weaken this thing a bit. Went into Staravia to predict the Claw and get an Intimidate drop, textbook, and from there I was expecting a Sucker Punch, so it's my perfect chance to bring a Kadabra for the kill. Haunter down. Next in was Mismagius. I'm expecting a ghost move on Kadabra, so I go into Staravia. I don't have a Pokemon to do super effective damage, so Roselia was my best bet for a Leech Seed. But little did I know I walked right into a Confuse Ray, but before I even have a chance to get comfortable, Fantina brings out Psybeam, which I had no idea Mismagius had. But somehow she hangs on and powers through Confusion and a not 100% accurate Leech Seed. But after that I got completely swept, and I decided it was time to bring in God himself. After training up Bibarel and also grabbing the gift Eevee, shout out Umbreon197, I was back for revenge, this time with a plan. I decided to go for the Defense Curl rollout strat, which if you don't know, Defense Curl boosts the power of rollout. It's pretty beast, but it was immediately foiled because I got burned. And after that switch in momentum, I lost again. Now, I was mad. I decided to go talk to this random guy and he actually gave me a Lumberry, and with that, my plan was set. After pretending like a random trainer's Mischievous didn't almost faint my entire team on the way there, I was back. After taking down Duskull and Bibarel going down, I hit a lucky leech seed on this Magius and decided to play the old switcheroo on her ass. You see, if the AI knows it has a super effective move on you, it will always try and use it, but we can use this to our advantage. You see, if Kadabra is out, Miss Magius will always use Shadow Ball or Confuse Ray. And if we have Staravia out, it will always use Psybeam or Confuse Ray. But by switching back and forth, we can make it so we take the weakest move to our Pokemon that resists it and whittle down the HP through Leech Seed. Hey, it's cheesy, but I've had enough. And finally, the witch had fallen. With just Hunter left, a single confusion sealed the deal. And with that, I could finally rest. But before the journey could continue, we had a calorie to burn. Kadabra wrecked through his Staravia and Ponyta, and Roselia easily took down Prinplup. And after that, Monferno burnt his Roselia to the ground. We arrived on Route 209 and caught a Ralts, shout out KZ, and we arrived on the next route and caught a Meryl, shout out Natsuki. And then we got to these two trainers. If you've never played Sinnoh or if you just forgot, these are the two hardest trainers in the entire game. So I fought them one-on-one instead of a double battle, and not gonna lie, it was pretty close. I finally arrived in Vivestone City with about 1,000 steps to spare. After talking to Dawn, I headed straight for the gym and forgot my Pokemon weren't healed, lost a few steps there. But as a kid, this gym puzzle always gave me so much trouble, and to be completely honest, it was no different. But it only took me about a few hundred steps, and Golbat evolved in the process. I knew I was pretty underleveled for this gym, but I decided to give it a go anyways. To be honest, I should not have won this fight, but I led Staravia to get an Intimidate drop on Meditite, but after doing about half its health, I went down to a single Rock Gym. I sent in Golbat for the revenge kill, but next in was her Machoke, which after a few wing attacks took out my Golbat as well. After revenge killing with Kadabra, it was now down to Kadabra versus Lucario. I went for the Psybeam, but that's when I realized how much trouble I was in. Metal Claw put me all the way down to 2 HP, and Psybeam was definitely a 3-hit KO. But then, I landed the 10% confusion chance, and Lucario managed to hit itself 2 times in a row without touching me again. Hey, I mean, sometimes RNG is just on your side. But after that, I knew I needed to train. After helping Dawn fight some goons and watching her Clefairy Metronome outrage for some reason, I got the HM for Fly, which helps this challenge tremendously, in the same way that Teleport does. I continued on to the next route and caught a Rhyhorn, shout out Blake's, but as I entered Valor Lakefront, my steps came to a halt and I'd have to pick it up the next day. Day 3 was a bit rainy, but you know what, so was Route 210, so we're out here. I ended up going out a little bit later in the day and running 5,003 steps, which I was really happy about. Once I dived back in, I took a look at Crasher Wake's team and, oh, my Mons were level 28, his Ace was level 38. I had some grinding to do. I caught a Geodude in Ruin Maniac Cave, cause why not? Shout out Chris. I was also hyped to have my Valor Lakefront encounter be a frickin' Houndour, and then it roared me away. I then arrived in this weird town I never went to as a kid, and I retrieved a surprisingly important item for this challenge. By picking up the Sweet Key and giving it to this lady, you receive the White Flute. This is super helpful for grinding because at this point I'm still trying to grind using the tile rotation method, and White Flute doubles the rate you find encounters, so this makes it so much easier. I arrived in Pastoria and dived right into the rival fight. My Staravia just barely outbeat his, but after that, not gonna lie, he was kinda rocking my shit for a second, before I brought in Roselia. After that, I decided to grab my Safari Zone and Rainy Route encounter before challenging the gym. I caught a Skorupi, shout out Richbach, and a Quagsire, shout out Lakar. I then defeated all the trainers on the Rainy Route and made my way towards Crasher Wake to bring him back to his gym. And then I realized you only do that in Diamond and Pearl. So there goes about 1,000 steps. At least I got some XP. After a bit more grinding, I went straight for Wake and got destroyed. I decided to come back with a better plan. And holy crap, this fight was insane. I led with Skorupi for the sole purpose of setting up toxic spikes and then dying. Sorry, Scroopy. Then I went into Kadabra to set up a Reflect to bring in the big guns, Roselia. Wasting no time, I set up an Ingrain and Leech Seed before slowly but surely Giga Draining away on Gyarados. Easy. Time for the ace. All I had to do was survive an Ice Fang and get a Giga Drain, and I'd be sitting pretty. And... yo, thank God, that was a close one. Oh, come on. So Roselia went down, but I had a plan. I taught Monferno Grass Knot just for this. So I brought out Staravia to get Intimidate and Manip and Ice Fang, and the plan was going smooth until... come on, twice in a row? After this, I realized I had to play the long game. I switched between my Monferno flavored Popsicle and my Water Absorbed Quagsire, while the poison slowly but surely did its work. After stalling my way through that fight, I got to take it down, and now for the last Mon, a fellow Quag. I got a clean switch on a Mud Shot into my Staravia, and after 2 Aerial Aces, we both ended up dying on the same turn. A bit dramatic, but I'll take it. After waiting for my team to melt, I found Calorie goofing around while Team Galactic freaking blew something up. I chased around this guy until I saw Cynthia waiting for me, and she gave me a secret potion. I flew to Solaceon and used it to release the ducks, and she gave me an old charm. I caught a Ponyta on Route 210, shout out Stormwalker, and I then entered the most annoying place in the entire game. Wait, do you smell that? It smells like weed. The annoying freaking foggy area. If you don't remember this area, good. It probably required the worst HM ever to solve, and also lowered the accuracy of all your moves if you're playing while there's fog. After fighting like 20 vape kids, I was finally out of the hotbox route. I gave the lady the old charm and went in this cave when Cyrus jumped me and literally destroyed my team. But before I could rematch him, I ran out of steps, so that's where I had to end and move on to day 4. Day 4, I actually did the most steps I had ever. Despite being a little sore, I ended up getting 6,660 steps on the dot. I decided to spend a few hundred steps training up my mons because I was a bit underleveled, and after a few extra levels, Cyrus went down like nothing. I got the HM for Surf and continued through my journey. I flew to Jubilife and surfed towards Conalave. On this route, I got a really cool encounter, which was a Mr. Mime that I had never used before, but sadly it broke out of all my Pokeballs, so I had to pass on it. I arrived in Conalave and decided to gun it for the berry fight and got absolutely wrecked. I had completely forgotten how insane his team is. So I went back, healed up, and came in with a different plan. I led with Kadabra to set up a Reflect, but Staraptor still did half my health with Takedown. What a monster. Luckily he missed the second Takedown and I could Psybeam it to bits. Heracross came in swinging with a Night Slash, but I was able to whittle it down with Kadabra and Golbat. I brought Quagsire in to deal with the Rapidash, and after taking a good Surf to the face, he switched into Roserade to catch my second Surf. After going into Golbat on a Giga Drain, it went down to a single fly, and then in came Empoleon. I wanted to get a clean switch to Roselia, so I just went for a Confuse Ray, but Empoleon got that scary Metal Claw attack boost. Sadly, I could only get off one Giga Drain before it landed a crit Aerial Ace on me, so I went into Monferno to get a Mach Punch in. After getting one shot with Aerial Ace, I switched into Quagsire to clean up. I got off a Yawn before ending it with a Mud Bomb, and hitting Rapidash with Surf for the good old GG. After healing up, I sailed on over to Iron Island to meet up with Riley, and he gave me the HM for Strength. Once I met up with Riley, I realized this was an amazing place to train. Since Riley heals you, I had to get the team stronger. While I was training, Quagsire learned Earthquake, Roselia learned Toxic, Monferno evolved into Infernape and also learned Close Combat. Golbat evolved to Crobat and learned Poison Fang. Skorupi evolved into Drapion and also learned Poison Fang. And at the very end of the route, there was a Shiny Stone to evolve Roselia. At this point, the team was looking good. After returning to Conalave, I picked up the TM for U-Turn, which is an insane move. After melting some steel and taking literally every wrong direction I could, I ended up at the gym leader. Luckily, I had enough potions and full heals to get the team back to full health for the fight, so I could do the gym in one expedition. I led with Quagsire, which one-shot Bryce's Magnemite with an Earthquake, and after he sent out Steelix, I stupidly went for another Earthquake instead of a Surf, which probably would have one-shot, because of Steelix's awful special events. He got off a Sandstorm, and now with Sandstorm, the Spadef boost Surf didn't do too much damage. After wasting his Hyper Potion, I switched into Infernape and went to Mach Punch for the win. Honestly, this gym leader is the easiest in the game in my opinion. After that fight, Calorie was patiently waiting outside of the gym for me, which was kind of weird, and after meeting up with him at the library and chatting with Rowan, we learned that Calorie literally didn't even have a Pokédex. I never knew this. He grabbed his Pokemon and just dipped. But as we were all laughing at Calorie, a freaking explosion happened. Lake Valor got blown up by Team Galactic. Flew over there and oh my god, look what they did to my baby! After kicking some Galactic grunt ass, I realized as I got to Saturn that I totally forgot to heal after my last gym battle. But because you can't fly to this location, you have to physically run here, which takes at the very least 600 steps. I decided to just go for it anyways. I led with Kadabra and one-shot the Golbat with Psybeam. Took down the Bronzor, but lost my already poisoned Infernape in the process. I went to Crobat to deal with Toxicroak, and he went down in 2 wing attacks, winning me the fight. After that, I flew back to this lake, hungry for revenge for my fishy friends. After knocking out some more grunts, Mars was next. I led Infernape, which probably wasn't a good idea, so I went into my own Golbat, who happens to do Crossfade. And it took it out with 1 Confuse Ray and a few wing attacks. I went into Quag to handle the Bronzor, and then came in the big scary cat. I went straight for a yawn, and they luckily missed the hypnosis. It fell asleep the next turn, and the cat went down to 2 more earthquakes. The fight was mine. Now it was time to head to Snow Point. On the way over, I went to get my Route 216 encounter, which was a Snover, but I realized I only had 2 Pokeballs, and it got away. But just so you know, I would have named it after you, Jed. After entering Route 217, wasting a few hundred steps and grabbing Rock Slide, which by the way, why the hell is it here? Why? I arrived in Snow Point, healed up, and of course talked to the Psyduck, you gotta do that in every playthrough. Bought Pokeballs, and even though I only had about 1500 steps to spare, I decided to go back and get my 2 missed encounters. It was at this point I realized I had a ton of money, and I really should have stacked up on potions and revives to save me some steps and trips to the Poke Center. So I decided to be more aware of that going forward. My Cutie Lakefront encounter was a Swinub, shout out Emperor Icy, and my Route 217 encounter was a Sneasel, shout out Kevin Austin. After that, it was time for the gym. Only having about 2,000 steps to figure out this puzzle was a little daunting, but I realized when you're sliding on the ice, it actually doesn't count those as steps, so I barely lost any getting to the gym leader. I wasn't too scared of this fight just because of how insane Infernape is. She led with Sneasel that went down to a single Mach Punch, and next was her Piloswine, which went down to a single close combat, and in came Frostlass. Luckily there was no hail up, so she didn't have any insane evasion with her ability, so I decided I would stay in. I went for a Flame Wheel, which I saw was definitely a 2-hit KO. She went straight for a Psychic, and I lived. And even with her Citrus Berry, she died after the second Flame Wheel. Next in was a Abomasnow. I outsped and went for a Flame Wheel, and it one-shot, and that was the 7th gym badge. After holding in a Candace dick joke, I left to go rock climb up to Calorie where he had a cool anime moment and walked away. I grabbed the TM for Blizzard, and my Lucky Cutie encounter, which was a Golduck. Shout out Valentine. After that, I flew to Veilstone City, where in order to progress, you have to walk up and talk to this Galactic Grunt, which I thought was the dumbest thing. I always got stuck here as a kid. But this Galactic dude drops the storage key, and I use it to break in their secret base, and beat up some neon wig fellas who had a midlife crisis and ended up in a Pokemon science cult. I found another Galactic key and opened this door, which I thought was the right way, but it was really just a TM for the move Frustration, which, yeah, that's accurate. After maneuvering my way out of there, I realized I only had about 500 steps left, which, by the way, little tip for this challenge, similar to Teleport, you could use Fly to get to the same Pokemon Center in your own city, effectively saving about 50 steps. I did this almost every time the Pokemon Center was towards the direction I needed to be going anyways. I walked right in through the door of the hideout and used the key, pressed on through these annoying ass teleporters, and arrived at some weird galactic con. I went through some more teleporters and fought a few more grunts, and I saw I only had about 150 to 200 steps to spare, just enough to get me to the Cyrus fight. So let's do this. I stupidly led Roserade, which he led Sneasel, so I had to get a cheeky switch into Infernape for the one-shot Mach Punch. Next was his Crobat. Tried to get Kadabra in to hit a Psychic, but he caught me with an Air Cutter and a Poison Fang, and I went down. So I went into Quag and got off one Amnesia and Surf before realizing how bulky this thing was. I hit a yawn and started chipping away, but he used a full restore, which I admit I did not see coming at all. I decided to fight fire with fire and switch into my own Crobat. I hit a Confuse Ray and started chipping down with Wing Attack and got a lucky crit to knock it out. Last was his Honchkrow. Led with Confuse Ray and was able to get 2 Poison Fangs in before going down, then swapped into Infernape to close combat for the kill. I received the Master Ball and left to go heal my Pokemon, and on the way back I ran out of steps for that day, but overall I think we made the most progress on this one. Day 5 I actually ended up not running for about 2 days because I was a bit sore, so this is technically day 7 I think. And I only went for a brisk walk on this day and did about 1,586 steps. I went straight for the Saturn fight and I led with Roserade, which was not a good idea, that's 2 for 2. So I switched into Quag and got a double bite flinch, but powered through, and took down Golbat and 3 Surfs. Then came Bronzor, which Infernape died to, weird champ, and I finished it off with Crobat. Then came Toxicroak, which died to a single Crobat fly to win me the fight. After setting the lake spirits free, I flew down to Orberg, taught Crobat U-turn, and headed to Mount Coronet. I met up with Looker, who was tweaking out and gave me a weird pipe, then ascended to the peak of the mountain. There I decided I wanted to get my encounter and got a nose pass. Shout out Serwo. After beating up a few more galactic noobs, I arrived at the peak and dived into the 2v2 with Calorie versus Jupiter and Mars. I led with Quagsire and they set up a reflect and light screen with 2 Bronzors, which was a bit of a problem. I switched into Drapion, who they couldn't really touch, and I took one down with a few bug bites. After the switch into Skuntank, I got a lucky bug bite crit on the other Bronzor, and went into Quagsire for some more chip damage, but went down as soon as the Perugly came in. After that, I switched into Infernape to one-shot the ugly cat with close combat, and after a few Flame Wheels on Skuntank, it was finally down. The next Golbat went down to a freaking Flame Wheel Fire Blast combo move from me and Rapidash. After that, Cyrus activated the red chain or whatever, broke time and space, Giratina popped up and was like, "Was good," and Cyrus was like, "Oh shit," and then I jumped into a hole and now I'm here. After Spider-Manning my way through the Distortion world, I definitely didn't get lost and waste all my steps for that day. No, definitely not. Day 8 I actually ran in the morning, which I found out I hate. So I ended up with 3,690 steps. Nice. But that's okay. I got to pick up where I left off in the Distortion world. I finished pushing around some rocks for the Lake Spirits and caught up to Cyrus. Going into this fight, I led Roselia, but he led Houndoom. Wow, I really have to stop leading Roselia. So I switched into Quag, expecting a fire move, and took a flamethrower to the face. After taking a Dark Pulse, I was able to one-shot it with Earthquake, but his Honchkrow finished me off. Went into Drapion after, and I got a lucky poison with the Poison Fang, but it wasn't enough to take him down before I got hit with a Heat Wave. Not expecting a full restore, I switched into Infernape to Mach Punch, and after that bad call, I went for close combat, which just barely didn't kill, and I went down to a single Drill Peck. But after he brought out Weavile and one-shot my Crobat, I knew I was in trouble. I ended up going down, and when I stepped out of the Pokemon Center, I had a crushing realization that I had wasted over 1,000 steps now. I had to reclimb the entire mountain and venture through the entire Distortion world all over again. So I decided to switch up the team a little. I ended up dropping Kadabra and picking up Nosepass. I went to Mount Coronet to evolve and get some levels on the team, and after many steps, I finally got back to the Distortion world and made my way to Cyrus. Now you're probably thinking, why the hell did he get a Probopass? And well, first of all, I've never used one and I was kind of curious. But second is because of one move, Stealth Rock, which literally all of Cyrus's team is weak to. He of course led Houndoom and I led Probopass and set up Stealth Rocks and a Thunder Wave. I went into Quag and one shot with Earthquake. Next came in Honchkrow. After how much damage it took from stones, I thought I had a good chance to kill with Surf, but he got a really lucky Drill Peck crit on me, so Quag went down. This is where I really messed up though. I went into Crobat to U-turn into Infernape hoping for a dark move, but he used Psychic and got the Spadef drop. I decided I would just send the close combat and see what he would get into, and it was Gyarados. So I sacrificed Probopass and went into Crobat and got off a Confuse Ray, but I did not see the Ice Fang coming. And this is where I had to get a little creative. I switched into Drapion and got a lucky Confusion hit, and this is where I realized every time it sees Drapion, it goes for an Earthquake. If I could keep swapping back and forth and getting U-turn damage, I could eventually take this thing out. During the process, Drapion got frozen from an Ice Fang anyway, but as soon as he did, I switched and I had a gut-wrenching realization. I was in waterfall range. This was literally so intense. I switched into Roserade where my only hope was a Leech Seed, but I had to tank an Ice Fang. And I barely did, but it froze. Are you kidding me? But I thought out on the same turn and landed the Leech Seed. Okay, I see you, Roserade. After that, I went into Drapion and had to take a waterfall that I lived on 1 HP. But sadly, I just didn't have the means to survive after that and went down again. After this, I decided to dedicate my last 1,000 steps to training the team. I added back Kadabra, said goodbye to Drapion, and brought a new friend to the team, Glaceon. As I was training, my steps ran short, and that ended day 8. Day 9 and 10, I did no running. I was sore from hanging with my friend and skating, so I didn't get any progress done. But I did go to this really cool park with my friend and got in 2,550 steps. Day 10, I picked up where I left off and trained even more. Cyrus's highest level Pokemon was level 48, and at this point, I didn't even have one Pokemon at that level. While I was training up Glaceon, I needed to beef up its moveset, so I went and got the TM for Shadow Ball. After a very intense amount of training, I got Crobat to level 46, Quag to 46, Kadabra to 46, Infernape to 47, Glaceon to 43, and Nosepass to 43. Nosepass was so annoying to train because of the ability Magnet Pull, which attracts Steel-type Pokemon, where I had no super effective or even neutral effective moves to hit against. But anyways, with my now beefed up team, I decided it was time to finally take down Cyrus. After venturing down into the Distortion World again and tracking down Cyrus for the third time now, the battle began. I managed to make it to him with only about 450 steps to spare. I led with Nosepass again to set up Stealth Rocks, and after taking a Flamethrower and Will-O-Wisp, I switched into Infernape to catch another Flamethrower. After killing with a single close combat, I knew Gyarados was coming in. I had to sack Probopass for a free switch to Kadabra, so that's what I did and immediately set up a Reflect. But after some back and forth, Kadabra went down, leaving Gyarados with just a sliver of health. Knowing Cyrus was going to use a full restore here, I had to act smart. So I went into Quagsire to yawn on the off turn, and then switch into Glaceon. Now it was just a game of how many turns I could get this thing to stay asleep while I whittled it down with Ice Beam. And wow, I lucked out and managed to get it to sleep for 3 turns as Glaceon finished the job. Next was Honchkrow, which I was so happy to be able to outspeed and one-shot with Ice Beam, all because of that little bit of stone damage, shout out to Probopass. Next in was Weavile, and I tried to put myself in a good position by switching into Quag, knowing this thing would fake out first no matter what, right? But to my surprise, it actually Night Slashed me, which really sucked. Luckily, I was able to get off a yawn and live the perfect combination of 2 Ice Punches and 1 Night Slash on 5 HP, getting the lucky 2-turn sleep and taking it down. I decided to let Quag go down for a free switch into Glaceon to deal with Crobat. Even though Glaceon still got poisoned, it took it down with 1 Ice Beam, winning me the fight. Finally, Glaceon MVP. Then it was time to catch Giratina. After a bit of a battle, I managed to catch it pretty easily and named it Delcatty 16. After jumping into a random portal, I landed in Sendoff Spring. I realized I hadn't been here yet, so I went to get my encounter, and my encounter was a Dusclops, one of my favorite Pokemon ever. Named it Emerald, shout out Emerald, and I knew I had to immediately add this thing to the team. Dusclops is such a fun Pokemon to use because it's super defensive, and as I was heading to Sunyshore City, I forgot there was something else I had to do. I had to go chat with Professor Rowan for literally no reason. So I lost a couple steps there, but as I headed back towards Sunyshore, I ran out of steps for the day, and it was time to run. Day 11, I did not progress in the game, but I did run on that day for a total of 6,078 steps. And on day 12, I took a very light walk and did 1,172 steps. Added those up, landed me a total of 7,250 steps to work with in this next session, bringing our current total up to 35,869. How do I keep ending up with 69? So I booted up the game and continued on my journey towards Sunyshore. As I entered Route 222, I got to catch myself a Wingull, named it Nico Suave, shout out Nico Suave, I thought that name sounded great. And I of course stopped by the Pikachu guy's house. I said what's up to Flint, but before healing my Pokemon, I of course went to go pray at Munchlax Rock. All hail Munchlax Rock. Feeling like a new man, I went to the lighthouse to grab Volkner and decided to start taking down the mandatory trainers. As I made my way to the gym leader, I surprisingly wiped to one of the trainers towards the end, and to be honest, I was really trying to level up and use Dusclops, but it was not pulling its weight. But I love her anyways, she's staying, get used to it. After getting back to that trainer and beating them in like 2 seconds this time, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I got a bit stuck on this puzzle, wasted at least 1,000 steps, but eventually I got it. I honestly did not remember what Volkner's Pokemon were leveled at, so I just went for it. I led Dusclops and set up a curse on Jolteon. It got a Charge Beam special attack boost, so I went into Quagsire to absorb an electric type attack, but it went for Iron Tail, which was fine too. After it went down to an Earthquake, it was time for Raichu. Luckily, Raichu missed its Focus Blast, and I was able to one-shot with Earthquake, and next up was Electivire. I went for Earthquake, and after taking a Giga Impact, it went down to just 1 more EQ. Then in came Luxray. I was able to take a Crunch just barely and do some big damage with another EQ, and when Quag went down, I got a clean switch to Kadabra and killed with Psychic, earning me the final gym badge. The next stop was the Pokemon League. After getting the HM for Waterfall from Jasmine, I continued on my journey. As I entered Route 223, I caught a Mantike, which I named Windterror, shout out Windterror, in which they specifically requested to be an HM slave, which was perfect because I immediately taught it Waterfall and Surf. After battling literally every single trainer on Route 223, I finally arrived at the Waterfall, leading me to Victory Road. After almost 2 weeks, I could start to see the horizon on this challenge, And honestly, now that I was thinking about it, I really enjoyed this. Never have I done a playthrough that didn't feel special in some way, but as I gazed out on this waterfall, I was very aware that I had gotten here myself, on my own 2 feet, and that was pretty cool. Even though some might say it wasn't that much exercise or work, it was definitely a significant amount for me, a drastic amount more than I had been doing, and I honestly could feel it. I was feeling better, and standing on top of the waterfall awaiting Victory Road felt pretty victorious. But my journey wasn't over yet. I ventured into Victory Road where I got my encounter, which was an Onyx, which I accidentally clicked run from. After many trainer fights that Glaceon just absolutely blew through like nothing, I arrived at the Pokemon League with about 4,000 steps in the bank to train. But I was aware there was a rival fight with Calorie first, which I wanted to at least attempt before training up, so I went for it. I led with Crobat on his Staraptor, and after getting a Confuse Ray, I U-turned into Glaceon to outspeed, holy shit, and one-shot with Ice Beam. Then next in was Rapidash, so I switched into Quag, and Dash went for a Bounce, which didn't do too much, but I did sadly get paralyzed. Luckily, I powered through the para and one-shot with Earthquake. Next in came Roserade, so I had to switch. I went into Infernape and took a Giga Drain and also one-shot with Flame Wheel. Then there was his Empoleon. I went for close combat, fishing for the kill, but it ended up living on 1 HP, and I went down to a Brine. At this point, I was sure Barry would heal, so I switched into Quag to finish it off with Earthquake after surprisingly no heal came in from Barry. Next was Barry's Heracross, so I switched into Crobat, who took a close combat like a goddamn champ, and one shot with a nicely placed fly. Then last up was Snorlax, so I went for Confuse Ray and got a nice double hit and a Poison Fang, before switching into Dusclops, make that a triple hit. Sadly, it went for Rest, which made my Will-O-Wisp turn useless, so I went for Curse. After waking up and crunching me to death, I switched into Kadabra to finish it off with Psychic, winning me the fight. Now, there was only one thing left for me to do: train. I had to decide what team to use for the Elite Four and train them up to the desired level. I decided to go back and grab some encounters that I had missed through my playthrough. I also leveled up all my Pokemon to the final Elite Four member's highest level Pokemon, which was 60. I went to grab my encounter in the Trophy Garden, which ended up being a Pikachu. Shout out Atomic. Next up was the Fuego Ironworks, where I also grabbed the TM for Thunderbolt and caught a Magnemite. Shout out Yu-Gi-Oh! Surg. I went south of Sandgem Town to catch a Tentacruel. Shout out Plumbum. I also caught a Sudowoodo on Route 223. Shout out Pseudo U-Dog. And grabbed the TM for X-Scissor. I also missed my Route 205 encounter, which was a Wurmple. Shout out Weebeans. And now it was time to grind. During my grind session, a few important things happened. I decided on using Magnemite for the team, so Magnemite evolved to Magneton, and then I flew to Mount Coronet to get it evolved into Magnezone. Look at my boy, he's so cute, ouch! This was definitely the most training I have had to do the whole run, and the spin method was literally wearing out my thumb. All I gotta say is thank Munchlax Rock for the white flute doubling my encounter speed. I also made sure to go delete all the unnecessary HMs on my Pokemon, after I annoyingly had to delete Blizzard for Miracoat on Glaceon. During this grinding session, I realized though throughout the run I had overlooked something that would have helped me immensely along the way: fishing rods. I had not picked up a single fishing rod during the run, and for some reason it took me all the way till Victory Road to remember that they exist and you don't have to move while getting encounters. After at least 3 hours of grinding, I got Magnezone up to level 55, Quag up to 57, Kadabra up to 53, Crobat I did not train basically at all and was chilling at 49, Glaceon I got all the way to 59, and Infernape to 55, finishing out day 12. Day 13 I picked up where we left off and continued grinding. Words cannot express how much grinding this was. This was a very brutal reminder of how slow everything was in Gen 4. But after about 4 hours of total grinding, maybe like 20 seconds for you, I got every Pokemon on the new team to level 59. The time was now. All we had to do was change some movesets around and go for it. I spent the last few thousand steps grabbing the TM for Flamethrower from Fuego Ironworks and teaching it to Infernape. I also stopped by Pastoria, taught Magnezone to move Barrier through the Move Relearner. I also went and grabbed the TM for Thief, taught it to Dusclops to go steal a Black Sludge off of Krogunk and give it to Crobat, which oh my god took so long to get. And lastly, I grabbed the Icicle Plate from Route 217 and gave it to Glaceon. After all that preparation and approximately 1,000 steps left in the bank, we all know what it was time for. We had to go pray to Munchlax Rock one more time, baby! And then it was time. The team was ready. Elliott Eel, the Infernape. Yu-Gi-Oh! Surg, the Magnezone. Shadow, the Crobat. Umbreon 197, the Glaceon. And who could forget Lucario the Quack and Soda Cat the Kadabra. Let's do this. First up was Bugsy, whose team I didn't even look up, and the only plan was to burn with Infernape. Bugsy brought out Yanmega, which went down to a single flamethrower, and next in was Drapion. I went for Dig, which did super effective damage, but only brought it slightly below half, and that was before it ate its Citrus Berry. From here, I decided I want to switch, and as this Drapion was throwing aerial aces, who better to take one than our boy Magnezone? And boom, it took it so well, oh my god, that was a crit. You're a mad lad, I love you. Ouch! Stop! After a fly's wing barely touched Magnezone's eyelash, I went for a Thunderbolt, which actually took it down. Next in was Heracross. Expecting a close combat, I went to Crobat, who ate it like a damn champ! After outspeeding and going for a fly and luckily dodging a gnarly Stone Edge, while in the air I took it out with one very unnecessary critical hit, but damn Shadow go off. Next in was Scizor. I decided to get a Confuse Ray off and U-turn into Infernape, which was definitely the right play because it hit itself in confusion twice and then got burnt to a crisp, winning me the fight. That one honestly went so smooth. Luck was falling my way and hopefully that would continue. But after dusting off my team, it was time for round 2, Bertha and her crazy Whiscash. Not having any grass moves was a little worrying for this fight, but I decided to lead with Glaceon. I got off a Toxic and took a hefty amount of damage from Earth Power. After using Shadow Ball and doing some chip damage, it got off a Sandstorm, and now realizing all the Rockmons were going to have a boost to their special defense started to worry me a little, but I decided to stay in. I sent another Shadow Ball, which luckily ended up killing, and next in was Golem. I decided to stay in on this one and go for Ice Beam, even with the Spadef boost. And oh man, it still ended up killing. But after that, in came the bigger guns, Rhyperior. There's no way I one-shot this one too with Ice Beam, oh my god I did. Next in was Gliscor, and hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, get absolutely destroyed. But the real question is, can we get the whole team sweep? Yeah, we can. So Glaceon won me that fight entirely by itself. What a mad lad, Icicle Plate coming in clutch there, definitely worth the steps. But there's no time to rest because next in was Flint. I decided to lead with our trusty Quag, and Flint led with Houndoom. After taking a stupid amount of damage from Dark Pulse, I was able to sneak in that one shot with Earthquake. Next in Rapidash. I was very tempted to Quake this thing, but I was expecting a bounce, so I switched into Kadabra to set up a Reflect on the buy turn. And oh shit, that's not a bounce, that's a Solar Beam. I decided to stay in because I didn't have a great switch, and just decided to gauge how much damage I could do with Psychic. And although it did a lot, Rapidash ended up getting a crit Solar Beam on me, which nearly killed me, but I was able to finish it off with another Psychic, and next up was Infernape. Still leading Kadabra, I was hoping to just barely outspeed and one-shot it with Psychic, but damn right I did. No one underestimate Kadabra, this thing's a beast. Anyways, next up was Flareon, which freaking killed me with a quick attack. Okay, I'll shut up about Kadabra. So after that free switch, I decided to go into Infernape to go for a dig. While I was underground, Flareon went for Overheat and then Quick Attack, effectively nullifying the only turn it could actually attack. Nice one, Flareon, real 5-head over here. Flint then used a Hyper Potion and I went for another dig. Unfortunate timing, but never underestimate the stupidity of Flareon because it did it again. Now it was time for the big guns. Literally, I think that's a freaking gun on its arm. Anyways, I went for a dig and I got a decent amount of damage and was able to trigger its Citrus Berry. But sadly, when I came up, I got Thunderbolted pretty hard and got paralyzed, so going for another dig was a bad idea. 2-turn move, 2 chances to get paralyzed, no thanks. So expecting another Thunderbolt, I went into Quagsire, which worked out perfectly. Then Magmortar drew in some light for a very scary Solar Beam, but I was able to finish it off with an Earthquake, winning me the fight. Overall, pretty good fight, only 1 loss. Next up, Lucian. My initial plan for Lucian was, get this drumroll please, Glaceon, again. But after Lucian finished reading his book, that's Cat by the way, the fight began. I obviously led Glaceon and Mr. Mime was up first. It set up a Reflect, which was totally fine as I was planning to use special moves anyways, and I went for Shadow Ball, which sadly was a 2-hit KO. But I at least got to waste one of Lucian's full restores for another Shadow Ball. Mr. Mime went for the Psychic, which did a decent amount, but I was able to finish it off and in came Bronzong. Probably my biggest obstacle. Completely expecting a Steel-type move, I went into Magnezone, but it actually got a very scary Calm Mind off. I went for a Test Thunderbolt, which did a solid amount, but I got another Calm Mind off, and I needed to kill this thing. Another Thunderbolt in, but this time it went for Earthquake, which I did not know it had. But luckily, Magnezone, being the goddamn protagonist, it tanked it like a hero, and was able to finish the job with a final Thunderbolt. Next in, Gallade. Expecting a fighting type move, I went into Crobat, and it took a Drain Punch like it was nothing. I went for a Fly, which ended up missing, and ended up almost getting Psycho Cut in half. Decided to U-turn out into Kadabra, expecting another Psycho Cut, but I got a freaking Stone Edge, which was pretty scary. Decided to go for Psychic, which was definitely not the play. I should have gone for Reflect because I ended up dying to a Psycho Cut right after, barely doing any damage to him after his Citrus Berry kicked in. I went into Crobat and prayed to Munchrock that I didn't miss the second Fly. Luckily, I didn't and was able to finally knock that thing out, but not gonna lie, I was a little scared there. Espeon was next. So I got a ton of damage with U-turn and went into Glaceon, hoping to be faster and finish the job, but sadly that was not the case and died to Psychic. Switched back into Crobat to finish it with a U-turn. Went into Quagsire as Lucian sent out a very scary Pokemon, Alakazam. I tried to get a Yawn off, but had no idea it had an Energy Ball, which destroyed my Quag in one shot. Now my heart was beating. Decided my best strat was to go into Crobat and U-turn into Magnezone and hope to tank a Psychic move, which is exactly what happened. But Psychic did a hell of a lot of damage, and Alakazam was in Healing Rage. I decided to risk it all on the Thunderbolt, which paid off, but I had to go down and finish it off with U-turn. Holy crap, that was intense. Now, there was just one battle standing in the way of me and victory. The bad bitch herself, Cynthia. I led with the old faithful, Magnezone, since it resisted all of Spiritom's moves, which was her lead, but the scariest thing about that is it will probably bait an early Garchomp, which is not good. But I decided to take the risk. As I walked into the room, my heart was racing faster than it had in the past 2 weeks, and that's saying a lot. This was it. This was the end. This was the culmination of my journey before my very eyes. I started the fight off with Thunderbolt, and Spiritomb fired back with a not very effective Dark Pulse, finishing it off with another Thunderbolt, and then there he was. The big boy. Or girl, sorry. I debated staying in, but I knew it was going to Earthquake me. I went into Crobat, effectively eliminating all momentum and starting from zero, but that was fine. With that, I threw out a Confuse Ray to kind of test the waters, but got Dragon Rushed immediately. It was clear there was no switching out. So I used Fly, hoping it would hit itself, but it powered right through Confusion. At this point, I really wanted Glaceon to just take care of this with an Ice Beam, but I was very scared of that Flamethrower. But I went for it. And Glaceon took it like a beast and one-shot that monster. But the fight was far from over. In came Lucario. I was expecting an Aura Sphere, so I was debating between Infernape or Quagsire. Ultimately chose to switch into Quag, and thank God I did because it wasn't Aura Sphere, it was freaking Stone Edge, which Quag handled easily. I went for an Earthquake, but before I could get comfortable, I got critical hit by an Aura Sphere. Shit. Infernape it is then. I bet it all on a close combat, which very thankfully one-shot. Next was my Milotic. Now Quagless, I had to figure out how to take a Surf. Whatever move I made next was going to determine the entire fight. After about 10 minutes of thinking, I decided to switch in and sack Glaceon and use the free switch into Magnezone, which turned out to be a bad idea, because after using Thunderbolt and living on 1 HP, Milotic used Mirror Coat. You gotta be kidding me. Now the pressure was on. I just basically wasted 2 of my best Pokemon, and it was now a 3v2. All momentum was gone. Went into Infernape to try and take this thing down with 2 close combats, and thankfully it worked. Togekiss was next. This thing had Air Slash, so my best bet was to get another close combat and hope Kadabra had what it took to deal with the rest. And here it is, my last stand. And I lost. So, love it or hate it, I decided to reset instead of doing the whole Elite Four over again. And the reason I decided to do that is not because I didn't have the steps to do it, because I had plenty, but the level cap. If I were to go through the Elite Four again, I would probably get over the level cap of 60 for this fight. So my best option for a good difficulty spike was to reset and fight Cynthia one more time. But let me tell you, this fight was just as intense. I led Magnezone again, since it was still my best lead. I took down Spiritomb easily with 2 Thunderbolts, and here it comes. My only option here again was to switch to Crobat and Confuse Ray, so that's what I went for. But sadly, my luck was just about the same, and took another Dragon Rush to the face. At this point, I was down to 2 options. U-turn out into someone who can take a ton of damage from Dragon Rush, or fly and hope for some chip damage and lose Crobat in the process. So I went for it. Sadly, Garchomp snapped out of confusion though, so goodbye Crobat. Oh my god, let's go. Dragon Rush missed. After Black Sludge, I was now in a spot where I could live another Dragon Rush, so I went for Confuse Ray, and Garchomp actually ended up hitting itself, and I went for Fly again, and it hit itself a second time. But the time where it actually mattered, it powered through and hit me for some big damage, but I could still get one more Fly in. So I flew once, Garchomp snapped out, used Flamethrower, meaning Crobat was a goner. Oh my god, I lived again. But there was another problem. Garchomp was in heal range. Betting all my money on a full restore right now, I U-turned into Glaceon. After taking a Flamethrower to the face, I took down the terrifying Garchomp with a single Ice Beam. Next in Lucario, of course. At this point, Lucario had a 50-50 chance to use Aura Sphere or Stone Edge, so my only good switch was back into Quag hoping for a Stone Edge, which paid off perfectly. Took an Aura Sphere to the face, thankfully not a crit this time, and went for Earthquake, and... oh, come on, man. Expecting another full restore, I went for another Earthquake, and the exact same thing happened. So at this point, I have no good switches or priority moves, and I wasn't sure how many potions Cynthia had, so I went for another EQ. I then went into Infernape and finished the job with a Mach Punch, and in came my Lodic again. I sacrificed Infernape for a hefty amount of damage on my Lodic, and went into Magnezone. Magnezone was able to tank a Surf and finish the job with Thunderbolt. Next, Togekiss, who just instantly one-shotted me with Aura Sphere. I was starting to get nervous again, but I was still in a little better position this time. Went into Crobat and used Fly for some decent damage, which worked, but I went down to Water Pulse. Then into Kadabra for Psychic, and was able to finish the job. There it was, the last Pokemon standing before my victory, Roserade. I had one plan here, Psychic. This Psychic had to kill. And it didn't. Now on to my final Pokemon. All I had to do was outspeed. I was 2 levels above, and my Glaceon was pretty fast, but was it fast enough? Cynthia had been saving another full restore that whole time. But Glaceon was just too strong. I guess we'll never know who was really faster. And there it was. My journey was over. Total steps taken in game, 38,556. Total steps taken in real life, 40,391. After 13 days of running almost every single day, I weighed in at 206. Little editor's note here, after the extensive editing process that was this video, I've kept up my regular exercise and I'm officially under 200 for the first time in a long while. All in all, this was a pretty awesome experience. Running, going on adventures every day, had me happy to be alive and motivated. With every step, I really did feel like I was progressing, moving forward. Life has a way to make you feel lost. Why do you go outside? Why do you get out of bed? But every day of this challenge, I had something to do. A Pokemon to catch, a world to save, and a Munchlax rock to visit. Every day as I grow older, I realize how important it is to connect with my inner child. I've grown to admire the young, excited version of myself who didn't even think about why to get up. He just did. And every day that becomes the harder part in life, to just do. But no matter who you are, where you are, happy or sad, love or hate Pokemon, find a reason to take another step, talk to people, and take the road of most resistance. And you never know. You just might end up a Pokemon champion.